Thanks, Marcus, for having me. Little intro, Mukul Sheopory. I'm a product marketer by profession. I love working for companies that market to small business owners. So essentially, my work experience has been I worked for companies like Intuit, GoDaddy, and most recently RingCentral, in all of which I was focused on the SMB segment. And recently, I was impacted by the tech layoffs, and I'm currently looking for my next adventure. So this is a good time for me to connect with you and see, and have some retrospective on what we do, how we do it, and what I should be thinking about. So.
Well, the timing works because now we're going to be able to, I'm going to pick your brain about the past adventures, right? And then in the future, we'll talk about the new adventures when they come up. But let's start off, basically similar to what I do mostly on these episodes is, let's dive into kind of the open-ended, if you could tell a story or two of some messaging challenges, positioning challenges that you've overcome. And I like that you brought up your specific focus on small, medium-sized businesses because, part of the audience here that I really want to make sure has some specific takeaways and actionable takeaways is, where we can talk about the thinking behind positioning messaging, but also get into like the actual practical, tactical, execution of that. So, but I'll hand it back over to you and you can kind of share your stories.
Yeah, I can start with one story from my GoDaddy days. This was it was 5 years ago when I left GoDaddy to join RingCentral. So it's a little dated, but essentially around 8 years or so ago, I had joined GoDaddy and I was doing product marketing for their new website builder product, which they had basically built from the ground up. And the domains was still their big business. They were looking for a new on-ramp, for their customers. And they had this website builder, which was competing with companies like Squarespace and Wix and Weebly and those kind of website builders. And when I took over the product marketing for that product, the messaging was, I think it was something like build a professional website, or let us help you build a professional website. And the way I generally start building a value proposition or messaging is, I focus on customer insights. So that's what I did. I started digging into some of the feedback that we were getting from customers, their verbatims, and then we had some customers that the product team had been working on a beta for a while. So started talking to those customers. I also brought on board a company to help me with some research. So we sent out some surveys, did some analysis on the responses we got. And essentially, what I found was the term build a professional website did not really mean anything, because what does professional mean? Okay, it's a little abstract. And then the other key insight was our competition. The websites that you could build on a Squarespace or Weebly provided more creative control. They were much more, in terms of the color palette, in terms of just the kind of control you had in building a website. You had much more control on those competitive products. So what was it that, what could we talk about in terms of, our positioning and our value proposition? So in discussions with some customers in a focus group, I was like, they had been customers for a while, they've been using it. And I started talking about why they like. So first of all, do you like the product? They said yes. I'm like, why do you like it? And these are small business owners. So some of them were not super tech savvy. And what I learned was the fact that there was a template-based workflow when they signed on. They were not confronted by like an empty screen. They didn't have to like play around to build the components of the website. it was basically picking, there were templates that were pre-selected based on the industry they were in. And they could choose from those templates, customize them with their own, words and their own imagery if they wanted to, and they were off to the races. So they, like in some cases, we found that they were able to make it in minutes. They could create a website and put it up in a few minutes, and that was a major delighter. So based on that, that insight, I came up with the messaging around build your website in under an hour, and that really resonated with the small business audience, because they don't want it to be, pixel perfect. They don't want it to be, if they're, especially if they're, if they're not tech savvy, they're afraid of it taking forever, and the other issue was, if you're a small business owner, you could hire somebody to build a website for you, but that's like thousands of dollars. So if you're, if you're actually looking for building a website yourself because of the cost, the economic reasons, then this was even more appealing. So I created the messaging and the value proposition around building your website in under an hour. Worked with different marketers within the organization to launch a campaign, for demand gen, update the website to reflect the new messaging, and then also had, with the sales enablement team, did a road show where we went to the different, locations where we had sales reps, and talk to them about how to talk about this aspect of the product, how to use this to differentiate from the competition, and it did, the campaign did really well, and that I don't think that's the messaging right now, but it when we launched it beat the Evergreen campaign at the time, so that became the messaging for the product. So.
That I love that as a case study or as an example, right? Because everybody listening knows websites. We can all, whether you use, GoDaddy or not, or any of these other platforms, it's easy to picture this. So I wanted to unpack that a little bit, because there's a couple of things that I thought of that I think are great examples in this. And first, you mentioned that compared to some of the other, you didn't mention WordPress. Was WordPress one of the competitors in that?
So WordPress, GoDaddy used WordPress as well. So WordPress is basically, it's a competitor, but it's not it's not a DIY for the, you need to be a little more tech savvy to use WordPress. So it was not purely, in that category.
Got it. Yeah. And so, you mentioned that it didn't have as much creative control, I think is how you worded it, right? And there's two ways people can go with this. Like, they think, okay, they look at the competition, they go, like, let's say they're building the next, GoDaddy website builder, right? And they're going, well, everybody else has all these tools and functions and creative control, so we need to do that, right? It's like almost like an impulse reaction, right?
Right.
And what actually turned out, I'm going to say weakness with air quotes, right, is the fact that it didn't have all the control was the thing that was, in this case, the potential strength.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I want to highlight that, because I think that so many people that are founders or marketers within companies are looking at what they do.
Right.
I think, is it 37 Signals is the name of the company that does Basecamp? Yeah. I just remember reading about Basecamp, and it was like, we're super stripped down, real basic. We're not going to be Salesforce or whatever so I just wanted to kind of highlight and see if you had any additional thoughts about that particular aspect of it that you wanted to share.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's also, who is your audience, right? You got to know your audience. So for Squarespace, if their audience is like a design professional who wants the website to be pixel perfect and to have like an infinite like palette of colors and all kinds of fonts available to them, then this will not fly, right? But for a small business owner who is not tech savvy, who needs to have an online presence to showcase their business and get more revenue, get more customers, but they don't have the technical chops to do it. For them, this is like a no-brainer, right? So it depends on like, if it is a weakness for your target audience, then of course you cannot shout from the rooftops. But if it is actually a strength for them, and if it is actually benefiting them and helping solving some a key pain point, then then use that to differentiate. Don't feel shy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also brings up the opportunity to pick your targets, right? So, small business owners, that's as broad as it gets, right? So if you happen to, have a company where the product or service is something that we'll call, again, limited or whatever, it just doesn't have all the whiz bang features. But look, it's like, okay, well, maybe we're at this iteration, at this stage, maybe it's not going to be the right fit for these people, but like, who would love this?
Exactly.
Right. And I would imagine there's almost always a case of there's going to be people that really want what other companies go, oh, well, they don't have all this stuff. Not everybody wants all this stuff, right?
That's right. And then there was also a little bit of messaging around defining the category that we did. So, for example, not all small business owners are created equal, right? If you're, for example, if you're a dentist, or if you're a doctor's office, you don't even want to build it yourself. Your revenues could be in the millions, and you want it to look professional. You do want it to be pixel perfect. You do want it to, you want it to have exactly your logo. You want the colors of the website to exactly match your logo, or what have you. Then this product may not be right for you. Then you need our professionals, the GoDaddy professionals, to build a WordPress site for you. So I also created some blog posts around that, where I got the idea from one of the discussions with the sales group in one of the meeting with the sales team. We were talking about how to differentiate between the website builder that was a DIY versus a professional services team creating websites. And in that roadshow, while talking, one of the things that came up, and my friend, he was in the sales side, Hussein, he came up with this analogy that it's like building it's like making a sandwich. Do you want to make a peanut butter jelly, or do you want a Reuben? If you want a Reuben, if you're a good chef, you could probably make it yourself. But if not, then you should go to Quiznos or somewhere to make it for you. So I love that analogy so much that I created a blog post that talked about how building a website is like making a sandwich. And that helped, that became something that our own sales team used to explain to customers which path you should go for. Should you build it yourself using the GoDaddy website builder, or should you use our GoDaddy's professional services to build a website for you? So even that, there were multiple flavors, and it was a good engaging way to explain to a small business owner what's right for them.
I love that, and it takes away the language barrier, and not what we're thinking of like typical geographic language, but just this. It's so easy to get caught up in your own product / service love affair, right? Where you're just like, check out all these things, and sometimes people care, right? But a lot of times, the things that you think are the coolest part of what you do, the person you're trying to help has no idea what that is and why it matters, right? But most of us have had sandwiches, and we can understand, right, what it's like. Many of us have had peanut butter jelly, unless you can't eat peanut butter or whatever, but it's easier to relate to that. I like that. So what you're doing at the beginning in that, and this is where we get into like the tactical kind of like, how do you actually execute messaging? How do you actually express what makes you different and why it matters to the right people? Because it's not just being about different, it's about being different in a way that actually matters. That's right. Is that you're acknowledging up front, hey, we might not be right for you. Right. And it's not the typical freemium that you just want to get everybody on board with the cheap one, even if it's not really what they want.
Right. No, actually, the what you just said made me think about another, it's not about this campaign, but it made me think about another source of insights that I always use. It's talking to sales reps. So even at RingCentral, when I was building the value proposition for the entire portfolio for the SMB segment, one of the key insights I got was listening to one of the sales leaders talk about it. I listened to some of the calls when he was having with our prospects, and he basically was saying that in certain cases, this product may not be right for you. You can go to the competition. And I was like, wow, this is cool. You really have to know what your product is and who it is for, and have the confidence to, if it's not right for a prospect calling in, to let them know that this may not be right for you. It's in the long term, it's better for them, it's better for you, it's better for the brand.
Owning that perspective, I think, is so key. And there can be a lot of pressure, whether you work for a bigger company or you're the founder and you're running things, if there's financial pressure, it's hard to let go. We don't want to ever let any opportunities go, right? Which to me is one of the fundamental challenges of positioning and messaging, right? If you can be comfortable in the fact that you're not for everybody, and not only not for everybody, there's actually some customer types that are the absolute wrong fit for you. That's and not only because they won't be pleased with what you do, but they're probably going to be really high maintenance. They're not going to want to spend like all these, like, think worst client, right?
Right.
But getting comfortable with the fact that if you can just choose, even if you're wrong, even if you have to iterate, but say, you know what, there's going to be people that aren't right for us, and it's okay. It frees you. Right? Whether you're a sales professional, whether you're running a business, and you can then go, oh, I don't have to try to figure out how to appeal to everybody.
That's right. And also, like, in the long term, if you take the longer view, it's better for you because they did not have a crappy experience, right? If you just sold it to them, even if it was not right for them, then yay, but they would be it will be suboptimal for them after they start using the product, and they would probably churn. They would probably have it be a negative NPS. They would probably there would be a small chance that they could even tell others that this product is not good, right? Whereas in reality, it was not good for them, but the product is good for a different set of that universe. So,
and from a messaging standpoint and an actual reaching an audience standpoint, you have to dilute your message if you're trying to capture all. You're the more different types of audiences and customer types that you try to attract, the more you get toward that build a professional website tagline. And then the other thing is every company, I don't care what size it is, has a limited budget. Some have less limits than others, right? But you're not going to be able to reach the entire, the total addressable market, like everybody that could use something like what you sell. So if you're only going to be able to reach for most companies, a very, very tiny percentage of those people, why not have them have something in common, right?
Yeah. It should talk to, like, your messaging should talk to the audience it is intended for, right? It should not be like, what is it, the Airbnb CEO and founder, Brian Chesky, he said that you're better off having a few people love you than a lot of people be satisfied with your product. So
satisfied is what like even like, saying it, it's like, ugh.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And thinking about, like, you mentioned the example with GoDaddy, and you already had an established customer base. You had launched the product, people were already using it, right? So that's a very nice position to be in, because then you can tap into those customer insights. A lot of smaller businesses, they already have customers, but they might not have as deep a well of customers to draw from, or maybe if they're really pivoting, or they're starting from, there's, you know, people that are really at the beginning of this where they're launching a new enterprise. Can you share some advice of, like, you know, when you don't have that existing customer base for whatever reason that you can tap into to get those insights, and you're not really sure how to position, where the messaging should start, what are some good starting points for people?
So I think even if you don't have customers, if you're a small business owner, and I don't have a small business, but I've worked closely with small business owners, and uh, if you're a small business owner, you should start with creating a product that solves a particular problem, and then even if you don't have paying customers, you've got to have users who give you feedback, right? So, for example, one of the customers of the website builder product at GoDaddy, she had this company which she made necklaces for new moms that were unbreakable, that did not have the materials used did not have any toxins in them. It was completely baby safe. They were if the baby tugged at those necklaces, they would not broke. So she started that product. It was like a craft project for herself, and then she gave it as a gift to someone, and they liked it. And then she started giving these to friends and family. So her product development and also the pitch for the product basically came from the feedback that she got from friends and family. And her trajectory was amazing. She grew that business from like a part-time thing that she did from a house to, I think she had like tens of employees, and she had major Instagram presence. She was an influencer for like small business owners and for moms, and it was a complete success story. But it started from the basics of create a product that solves that fits a need for a very specific audience, and then get feedback from that audience. So in her case, it was moms in her circle who really loved this product because there's nothing else that existed. Typical necklaces would get like shattered if the kid pulls at it, or if the kid puts it in their mouth, it's like you don't know if it's safe. So she found a very specific niche and really catered to that specific niche. And
I love stories like that, because like where it just organically kind of discovers itself, where they have this idea and they start playing around with it, and like you said, their existing circle of friends or whatnot. What I find though too is that you have the opposite situation almost as often, right? I'm thinking about like the lady that's, I forget her name, which is ridiculous because she's really famous, but who launched Spanx back in the day, right?
oh yeah, Sarah Blakely. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So Steve Jobs, who's Steve Jobs? No. And reading her story in a few books, she really had a hustle. She's like selling them to like buyers at department stores, things like that. So there's like these two sides of the story where you have somebody who just like had an idea and they showed it to their friend, and their friend was like, this is amazing, right? And then showed it to all their friends, and next thing you know, and then there's so many instances of like, it was still an amazing idea, but the road to figuring it out to market was much harder. So
right.
let's just do a thought experiment, right? So for somebody listening who's like, that sounds really good that they had that access to all those moms, but I don't have that, right? So let's pretend that person didn't have that circle of friends, right? But she had this idea about this necklace. Maybe it's because she's a mom, right? And she was like, this is something I would want. So it's this personal thing. And they're not really sure. They don't have that obvious market in front of them that they could test it out with, but they have to go into the cold world with something, right? They have to go to GoDaddy, and they have to start a website, they have to put pictures on it, right? So in that sense, if they don't have that kind of like people they can immediately talk to, what would be the right starting point that you would say, like in a more traditional kind of like having to start from scratch without that easy access to feedback?
Right. I think in that case, I would start with doing some like competitive research. Like if if you're thinking about a product, can you see if nothing of that sort exists, is there a adjacent product that you could dig into and see what kind of competition exists? Like, for example, if you're thinking of let's say Spanx has not been invented yet, right? And you're thinking of you're thinking of a product of that nature, can you go to Amazon and see what exists? If you're searching for for leggings for women, I'm not sure what the search term is going to be because I'm not in that market. But if you are, can you go to Amazon and see like what exists? Go to Google, search for those terms and see what pops in. And is there a demand for something of that nature, right? And then if you, and creating a product takes a lot of, in terms of just the investment, it takes a lot of resources, lots of money, lots of people. Maybe you could do a Kickstarter campaign, right? Can you do a Kickstarter campaign and see if you get interest for your idea, right? That way you don't have to create the product unless you get enough interest, right? Kickstarter or GoFundMe or whatever it is. Can you put it on your, on your social media, put it on your Facebook network and say, hey guys, I have this idea. If you're interested, and not just like, give me a like, but do you want to pre-order?
Because are they going to pay for it?
Would they pre-order, and would they pre-order even if it's like, or pre-order not the whole amount, but like, can you pay $5 or $10 to pre-order this product? See if you can get them to, give their credit card information for this product. If not, then you probably should think about investing, thousands or, tens of thousands of dollars into the product itself.
No, that's a great point too. And a lot of people, the product is excellent point as far as like really testing before you start investing, right? And that's gotten better with drop shipping and with the way people can manufacture now. Like it's totally different world. But let's think about flipping around for services too, because a lot of people starting businesses, they're creative businesses, or like the creative solopreneur, or somebody who's a consultant or something like that. They're selling some kind of expertise. And would you say it's pretty much like a similar situation with that, or is there a little bit of difference? Let's say somebody wanted to start, they have a specific set of experience that they think they can monetize, right? And they've worked in a particular vertical, and they maybe they have a good network they could start with, but maybe not, and what would be a little different in that situation, do you think?
I think it would be similar. You would not have like you could not have a Kickstarter campaign for that, but you still, like, what you're trying to evaluate is if the service is useful, right? And you got to identify who the target audience is for that. And could you find somebody to even do it for free? Like, could you do something for free to build your portfolio, right? So for example, if you're thinking about interior decoration, can you find somebody in your circle who could be the guinea pig for your project, and then could you use that, could you do it for free for them, and then use the before and after pictures to start a campaign and generate more interest, maybe within your own network first, and then with paid media, right? But you gotta start doing and seeing if there's an interest before you expend a lot of your time and your resources, even because your time is also a resource, right? It's not just money. If you're investing 6 months of your time in this, you want to make sure that it's actually useful and people would actually pay for it, right?
Absolutely. And the example you gave, the interior decoration, right? I think that's a great example to drill in on, because whether anybody listening is in that business or not doesn't really matter, but that's something that exists, right? It's not a new thing. And I think this has gotten better too over the years, but a lot of entrepreneurship advice tends to start with, do you have a new and novel approach to something?
That's right.
And that's great. I mean, if you're going to invent the next iPhone, like, good on you for sure, right? but most people that have businesses are in existing, industries where they're not reinventing anything. They're doing it from a slightly different approach or whatever it is that differentiates them. So I just think it brings up a good example for anybody listening that's kind of at the earlier stages, right? And they're kind of thinking about, how do I validate this idea? And so taking your advice, you could look, if it's a product, really do some testing first before you invest any real money into it. But even if it's a service, if you want to do something that you want to look, is there competition? The fact that there's competition is a good thing, right? Because that's proving to you, at least in this moment, that there's a market for it, right?
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's good, but then the next thing to consider is like, how do you differentiate, right? So, and I think, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say, well, that actually, let's dive into that, because, one way I approach this is, you're in a sea of competitors, right? You're in an established industry. There's no question about whether there's demand in the market. Right. The question is how you're going to break in, or how you're going to grow, or compete with people that are squeezing you out wherever you are in your own business, right? What are your thoughts about how your own personal strengths enter this? And I use personal strengths and business strengths kind of synonymously. Like it's like every person and every business has something about them that is reasonably unique. And I tend to look at that as being the starting point of that differentiation, right? It's like, what do you love to do? What are you really good at? So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% true. Like, what is it that you're getting out of it besides money, right? So, for example, the person I talked about earlier, Candace Jones, who had that small business for creating those necklaces for moms, she loved helping other mothers. So, and she really, like, it was awesome to see her go from strength to strength in her business, because she really became like an influencer and a glue for that community. So she was based in Ohio, and you could see, like, just following her on Instagram, just seeing the kind of engagement that not just a product, but just her posts got from mothers, and how much energy it gave her, and how it helped that community over there. So it's you got to figure out like what's in it besides the money.
So absolutely, because that also, let's keep talking about that particular case with the necklace. I think it's just, again, easy for people to visualize, right? Necklaces, maybe it's not a great example because it's physical. It's pretty easy to understand it, but let's say there's something comparable that you have a solution to a problem and it's not quite as visual, right? And you're going to go out to either your immediate network or, cold, kind of approaching people to get feedback. It's very possible that your initial approach to the messaging, how you frame it, might not land, right? And then you take that as being evidence that there's not demand, where that might not be the case, right? So can maybe dive in a little bit about some of those nuances where maybe it's just fueled by their passion. They're like, look, I don't want to give this up. This isn't one of seven or 10 different ideas. I believe in this, and they need to kind of like stick with it and iterate.
Right. I think it's also understanding the customer journey, right? Like how does your product or service fit into that customer journey, right? Because it'll give you ideas for marketing as well. So, for example, Candace, she was, creating a product for new mothers. So one thing that she did in her social media marketing that was really cool was, on her posts, she would identify other products new moms used, and she would tag them, right? So if there are some other products like a bag or a backpack that new moms use for carrying diapers and this, that, she would, like, in her post, she would have her necklace, a model, or herself modeling wearing that necklace with the bag, with some shoes that new moms wear, or some other. And suddenly you're talking to the wider audience, and you're seeing how your product fits in with the other products that new moms use, right? So now if you're extrapolating that for the interior designer, somebody who's wants to start an interior design company, think about like, when do people want to have their homes redecorated, right? If it's a new home, maybe that's when they want to have it redecorated, right? Could you connect with, in your local area, could you connect with a real estate agent who's a friend of yours or a friend of a friend? Could you be introduced to them and be like, hey, for your clients in the months of like June and July, I could offer free interior design services because I'm starting off, right? Would that get you, into that ecosystem? So basically, what you get is you get your portfolio with those 3 or 4 clients through the real estate agent friend of yours. But then, if your real estate agent friend sees that the service was valuable, you could start charging, and she would still recommend you, right? Because if it was positive. So how does what the product or service that you're offering, how does it fit into the customer's life cycle, right?
And that brings up a really important point with timing. And how timing, being at the right place at the right time, can have a massive impact on your immediate feedback when you're testing something new, or even when you've launched and you're in a proper business. I mean, we're all right now at this time of this recording, we're in this weird tech thing where, suddenly demand is like different, but, a year ago, it couldn't have been hotter, right? It's just this crazy. And, like, for example, as a copywriter, there would be, you're not going to get somebody like, if I am approaching larger companies, if they need a copywriter, I'm not going to create demand for copywriting, right? They either need a copywriter or they don't. When they need somebody, they really need them, right? When they don't, they really don't. And there's really nothing I'm going to say that's going to change that. So I just like that you brought that up, and just thinking for people listening, thinking about how the timing affects that. So if you're launching something or you're trying to grow something and you're figuring out the messaging, the timing and how that relates to what you said, the buyer's journey, really does make a big difference, because then now you're talking about the timing actually is part of that positioning, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And then also, again, like if you take the copywriter example, like there is no demand for it. I would put in air quotes, because there may be a demand for it. People are just overreacting and the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction. Like, no demand for it would mean copy everywhere is perfect and there's no need for improving copy at all.
Exactly. Right? And we've seen that's not the case.
Exactly. So the question is like, and I don't know the answer to that. I can just, throw the question out. Like, question is, what is the value of good copy, right? And can you prove that value to the gatekeepers of that copy right now, right?
Yeah.
Because no demand means that everything is amazing, copy cannot be optimized further. But if you can prove the value of like improving the copy wherever it is, if there's let's say there's a company that has a website that gets like, 50,000 visitors a day, if you could improve the copy that improves the conversion rate by 5%, what is the math, right?
Yeah.
Whoever is the web marketer or the general manager of that business, can you get access to them and prove it to them, right? And then let's see, is it worth spending like 40 hours of a copywriter's time on that or not, right? If the answer is no, then no, right? But I would challenge that assumption that there's no demand.
No, and that's actually, that's one of the reasons I like working with the smaller business segment, right? Because that's where you're talking about adding the value of the strategic thinking of how do we make this better, which is very different than if I'm doing a project, let's say for, a company that has 30 people in its marketing department, and they're the strategy people, at least that's their job, right? And they need somebody that's going to execute that. And at that moment in time, their budget is what it is, and they're either going to do it in-house or they're just going to leave it alone because nobody wants to do any, right? So there's these different types of like where there's a demand or where there's a possibility to increase it. But again, it's a great example for people listening. there's lots of different types of customer segments out there, right? So you can think about like how, if there's not an obvious demand, or if people aren't like in a situation where they see it right away, then part of the messaging and part of the positioning is, how do you take what your assets are, what your strengths are, and how do you focus on the people who you can actually be able to expand their understanding of what's possible. So now there's a new understanding, as opposed to you're already fitting within kind of an obvious bucket for them. What would be the first thing that you would look at? Let's say we were talking about websites, right? And you worked with these small business, medium-sized businesses, and their website in particular, which is really more, most smaller businesses messaging lives primarily on that, right? And they're just not getting conversions. They're just not getting even the traffic, the results that they were maybe getting in the past. What would be your advice if you were kind of troubleshooting that, and in your mind, what would you look for first?
So again, it again boils down to the context, right? So if you're a small business owner, try to step into the shoes of your customers, right? Or the shoes of your prospects. And can you replicate the steps they would take to find you, right? And what would that experience be like? So just go through that whole process. Like if you're getting if you're getting most of your web traffic from Google, from SEO, has something changed? Can you search for the terms that typically worked in the past? What's showing up? If your site is not showing up till like page 5, then something is, they'll never get to you, right? If most of your traffic comes from social media, what has changed? Has and if it's Facebook, has the Facebook algorithm changed? Like, try to replicate how a customer would find you and see if that's still working or not. And that's the first step, right? The next step would be the experience on the site. Has something changed on the site itself, right? Why is it not converting as well? Is there a new competitor, right? So when you look at it from the full customer journey perspective, that's where you would get the insights. And of course, like, data is where you would start. So first of all, have an understanding of where, if you're looking at your website performance, get data from the website, on the website traffic, comparables with the past periods, and just dig in, see, try to glean what's working, what's not.